What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Noche UFC delivers action-packed night. Saturday night's Noche UFC card in Las Vegas delivered action from start to finish. In the main event, Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko went head-to-head in a highly anticipated rematch for the women's flyweight belt. The fight saw both women find success at different points, with Grasso dropping the former champ early and Shevchenko responding with some impressive submission attempts. After 5 hard-fought rounds, the judges scored the fight as a split draw, with Grasso retaining the belt. Following the fight, the judges' scorecards were made public, with a 10-8 round for Grasso in the 5th receiving quite a bit of controversy. As the commentary booth explained, had Judge Mike Bell scored the 5th as a 10-9 round for Grasso like the other two judges rather than a 10-8 round, Shevchenko would have been declared the winner via split decision. Given the result and the high-level fight between the two, it's safe to say that these two will meet again in the future. In the co-main event, fan favorites Kevin Holland and Jack Della Maddalena squared off in what many dubbed the People's Main Event. The fight went the distance, with JDM being awarded the split decision win after 3 hard-fought rounds. The outlier among the judges was again Mike Bell, who scored the first round and the fight in Holland's favor, despite the 2 other judges scoring it in Della Maddalena's favor. After keeping his unblemished UFC record intact, it'll be interesting to see who the UFC has JDM fight next. Shout out to our first comments on yesterday's video. Thanks for the support. Chito Vera makes fiery prediction for potential OMalley rematch. A rematch between Marlon Chito Vera and the UFC bantamweight champion Sugar Sean O'Malley could take place later this year, although no plans have been formalized by the UFC. Heading into Saturday's Noche UFC card, the UFC hosted a pre-fight athlete panel with fighters that included Vera, who spoke about a potential rematch between he and the bantamweight champ.
I just keep getting better, keep training, staying in better shape, show up a little faster than I was before, better technique than I had before. And if I can improve a little bit from where I was in the fight before, that's all I need to be. He's a good fighter. He have the belt right now, but make no mistake, I'm gonna kick his ass again.
As O'Malley stated earlier this month on an episode of Michael Bisping's Believe You Me podcast, if the UFC wants to go by the rankings, then Merab Dvalishvili should be next. If he has his way, then it'll be Chito Vera who gets the next crack at the belt. Of course, at the same time, Aljamain Sterling has continued to make his case for a shot at the title as well, creating quite the logjam of contenders at bantamweight. The big question is, who will the UFC book him to compete against? Aljamain Sterling makes strong argument for immediate rematch. Former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling has continued to make his case for an immediate rematch against Sugar Sean O'Malley when he's ready to return to the octagon. While many fans are standing behind him, others have questioned whether or not he deserves another crack at the newly crowned champ after such a lopsided performance at UFC 292. While speaking in a video on his YouTube channel, Sterling referenced former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya in order to make his case for another title shot.
I'm just saying, if we're gonna talk about giving instant rematches, you give a guy who lost 2 fights back-to-back in a title reign, the same title reign. So he won the belt, he lost, beat the guy, and then came back and then lost again to another guy.
Right, that's why it's weird. I
So
feel
it's like, how you giving him another title shot?
It's like,
and then you tell me that I don't deserve it. That's what I'm saying.
Right,
if you give it to, I'm not knocking Izzy.
Right, yeah.
Izzy, if they give you the title shot, brother, take it and run. But what I'm saying is, how do you get it and I don't?
Despite his desire to compete for the bantamweight title again, Sterling has no plans of making a quick return to the octagon. As he enjoys a vacation in Bali, he's made it clear that the rest of the year will consist of R&R. Whether or not the UFC gives him an immediate rematch when he's ready to return to the octagon, only time will tell. UFC fight updates. A number of exciting fights have been added to upcoming events in the past few days. Without further ado, let's jump right in and take a look at the latest UFC updates. First up on the calendar, we have a thrilling bout between Javid Basharat and Victor Henry, which will take place at UFC 294 in Abu Dhabi. The card will, of course, be headlined by Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira, and the fight will see Basharat look to extend his unbeaten streak, while Henry will look to make it 2 straight after a narrow win over Tony Gravely earlier this year. The card will also see Nathaniel Wood and Mohamed Naimov compete, with Wood eager to build on a 3-fight win streak that recently saw him defeat Andre Fili back in July, and Naimov looking to build on a successful UFC debut back in June. Several weeks later at UFC 295, Pat Sabatini and Diego Lopez will collide on November 11th on a highly anticipated pay-per-view card headlined by John Jones and Stipe Miocic. The fight will see Sabatini look to build on a June win over Lucas Almeida, while Lopez will look to build on an August submission victory over Gavin Tucker. The card will also see Jamal Emmers and Dennis Buzukja compete in a bout that will see Emmers look to bounce back from a June loss to Jack Jenkins, while Buzukja looks to bounce back from an August loss to Sean Woodson in his UFC debut. With the end of the year approaching, expect plenty more fight announcements in the weeks to come. Sean Strickland being a menace. Newly crowned middleweight champion Sean Strickland recently terrorizing Monster Energy's Hans Molenkamp with a flamethrower. The outspoken champion was seen brandishing the flamethrower before then turning it on Molenkamp, who looks to get his arm hair singed in the process. The flamethrower appears to be from Elon Musk's Boring Company, the same as the one Joe Rogan famously has been using at his podcast studio in the past. Molenkamp, of course, is the Monster Energy executive who fighters such as Dominic Cruz have taken aim at in recent years. Molenkamp is allegedly responsible for deciding which fighters sign with Monster, which Israel Adesanya drew attention to prior to his UFC 293 fight with Strickland. After putting on one of the greatest upsets in UFC history, it's safe to say Strickland is enjoying himself. Given how active he's been in recent years, expect the champ to be back in the octagon sooner rather than later. Dana White goes off in interview. Dana White wasn't afraid to let his opinion fly while speaking with Piers Morgan in a recent interview. Over the course of the virtual sit-down, White spoke about everything from his parents' deaths to the infamous video of he and his wife slapping each other. When the topic of trans athletes competing in sports came up, White unloaded, explaining that, as a father, he doesn't want to see his daughter compete against kids born as biological males.
I have a daughter, okay, and I don't ever want to see a day where somebody who is a biological male is competing against my daughter. So, yeah, no, I think it's another nutty, insane thing that's happening in the world today, that we're all trying to deal with. And I'm just glad there's my daughter's a cheerleader. So she's not playing any competitive sports, but it hasn't happened in the cheer world yet.
White has, of course, taken heat for a number of controversial comments he's made over the years in the past. However, despite that, he's never shied away from speaking his mind whenever he gets the chance. Henry Cejudo reveals horrible news. Triple C Henry Cejudo recently announced some heartbreaking news online, revealing that his older sister has passed away after a hard-fought battle with cancer. In a heartwarming tribute, Cejudo wrote, "My older sister has been battling cancer for the last 2 years. I've never seen someone fight for their life like her. She played so many roles in my life, including being my second mom, the most selfless person I've ever met. Thank you for teaching me about unconditional love. No more pain and suffering. Rejoice with our Heavenly Father. Have those peaches in heaven you always wanted." Countless members of the MMA community have thrown their support behind Cejudo in the wake of the news, with his coach Eric Albarracin, Aljamain Sterling, Michael Bisping, Bruce Buffer, Alexander Volkanovski, and a number of other high-profile figures in the MMA industry all offering words of support in the comments of his post. Given the situation and the fact that the former champ's focus is not on fighting at this time, rather than discuss his fighting future, we would like to take this time to join the rest of the MMA community in sending our heartfelt condolences to the Cejudo family as they navigate this difficult time. Jamie Mullarkey, an Australian UFC fighter, just signed a new multi-fight deal with the UFC, and his management team leaked information about UFC 296 on multiple social media platforms. Jamie's team posted, "Pleased to announce Jamie Mullarkey has signed a new multi-fight deal with the UFC. Jamie, 3-10 in his last 4 fights, will be looking to get out next in Ireland in December if we can make it happen. Congrats, Jamie, well deserved." According to his team, UFC 296 will take place in Ireland, and that could have just spoiled UFC's plans to make a big event in Conor McGregor's home country, with Conor versus Chandler possibly being the headliner. If this is true, Dana White will be furious with Jamie Mullarkey for leaking this information early. As of right now, there's no confirmation on where UFC 296 will take place. But if the UFC is going to Ireland, it's possible that we see Conor McGregor's return and Sean O'Malley's first title defense in December. Chael Sonnen thinks that Khamzat versus Paulo Costa won't happen, and that the UFC will need to have backups before the event happens. Here's what Chael had to say.
Who are you going to put in the backup spot? And I think that it's very relevant. I think it's very relevant because we've never had a card before, right? There's all sorts of things about October 22nd that I love, which is if we're going to have a backup fighter, and I think we are. I don't think we're going to have it for the main event. The most important match to keep co-main event. Co-main event is what's important here. Now, if you bring in a backup fighter for the co-main event, you are signaling to the audience and the guys on the card and everybody else who can fog a mirror, that's the match that's most important, even though it's not the one to close out the night. Fine, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is the fear of potentially doing that, and therefore we don't bring a backup fighter for the co-main event, which is the match everybody wants to see, because that's the one that's in jeopardy.
Backup fighters are usually only assigned to the main event, but according to Chael, the co-main event featuring Khamzat will need to have a backup just in case he fails to make weight again. If that were to happen and the bout is cancelled, that would make a significant impact on the UFC 294 card. Top comments. People with good parents seem to be unable to understand that bad parents exist and could be a child's worst enemies. There are parents that abuse their children and allow really bad abuse to happen to their kids, especially in present day, where some parents are literally encouraging their kids to get sex changes. It's disgusting. Was that first story really necessary, as if Khabib was going to pick Do Bronx? There's more to the Brunson situation. I'm no expert, but I can't remember anyone getting a pink slip when they had a fight upcoming. I got Dana's back on the parent BS. If one or both of your parents were great, then great, but if you have a parent that's a no good piece of then you should get away from them. We have no idea what the dynamics or their relationship were like, and it's none of our business. If you want to be featured in our next video, make sure to leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you tomorrow.